guys, if you're new to Deception Bytes, hit the like and subscribe button and be sure to hit the bell to be notified of future videos. If you wish to support the channel, the links are in the description below. Now, fasten your seatbelt. Here we go. Okay guys, it's me. I'm back, and I told you that I was going to be doing 3 videos tonight, and I did actually record the second one and it was uploading quite nicely, and then I got a message that the file was corrupted. So I have been working on that problem to see what could have possibly happened, and I do think that I have it sorted out. So I'm going to go directly to the third video because it is the most important, I feel, and I do want to at least get the video that I got uploaded earlier and this one out. That is the most important. If I have time after that and I still have the energy, I'm going to re-record the Q News one. All right, so let's get into this right away. Now, I apologize. My cat is in the background whining, and he's got food and water and plenty of toys, so please don't feel that he is being neglected in any way. To the contrary. And we're going to be talking about Ebola. Now, I want to preface this by saying I am not putting this out as fear porn, and I have no reason to put it out as fear porn. I am not monetized. The only way I get any compensation at all for my work here is from Patreon supporters and those that throw me the odd coffee. So if I get, 50 views or 200,000 views, it doesn't make a lot of difference because the regular people who support me, and I'm not after a whole lot of more subscribers. I would rather have, the 50-some thousand subscribers that I have, which are good people that are supportive of each other and supportive to me, than have 200,000 people that are at each other's throats all the time. That's just, you get to the age where you just don't want to deal with that nonsense. So I have no reason other than genuine concern for putting this out there. And I am somebody that researches. I will research something, the crap out of something. And I started looking into this a couple days ago. And the more I started looking into it, the more concerned I got. And we are not being told the truth. So I want to bring this to you. I want to bring the information to you in as matter of fact as possible. So I'm going to start with this, but this is an old graphic. So here we go. This is the Ebola virus disease, and we're going to get into some very interesting stuff. So please stay tuned to this because I really want you guys to get this, and I want you to pass it on to those you love and care about. Now, Ebola virus disease, Ebola is most feared for the internal and external bleeding it can cause in victims owing to damage done to blood vessels. It was discovered in 1976, and since then, the majority of outbreaks have appeared in parts of Africa. At least 12,800 deaths have occurred globally since 1976. Now, I want to tell you, I think this is about 10 years old, okay, this graphic. So we're way past that now. At least, okay, it's saying that, and then it says, according to WHO, it is thought that fruit bats are natural Ebola virus hosts. Well, there's other hosts as well. Symptoms: fever, sore throat, severe headache, muscle pain, intense weakness. Now, when we get to these symptoms, that sounds like a whole lot of other diseases, doesn't it? And to tell you the truth, at the beginning, it presents like a whole lot of diseases, like or maladies, like flu, or any number of physicalities. So we've got fever, sore throat, severe headache, muscle pain, intense weakness. Then we go on to vomiting, diarrhea, impaired liver and kidney function, internal and external bleeding. Targets in the body are the functional cells in the liver, the lining of blood vessels, and blood cells absorb foreign particles. So, and it says possible routes: contact with the blood, secretions, organs, or other bodily fluids of infected or dead animals, consumption of infected wild animal meat, touching objects that have come in contact with the virus. Infected animals, chimpanzees, gorillas, fruit bats, monkeys, forest antelope, and porcupines are found ill or dead or in the rainforest. Now, I want to tell you something right now. Most people say, yeah, well, we don't have to worry because, it's contact with the blood, secretions, organs, or other bodily fluids of infected dead animals. Okay, well, we're not going to get it. Yeah, well, you need to know that right now there are cases appearing that don't have any connection to other cases. You see what I'm saying? Used to be, it would break out here, and as long as you contained it there, well, it wouldn't be likely to spread, especially if they took care of how bodies were buried, because the bodies are highly, highly contagious. And, as long as you weren't touching things that other Ebola patients were touching, you'd be okay. Well, not so anymore. And it's past the point of no return now. It really is. And if you're hearing otherwise, you're not hearing the truth. So I do want to tell you some very important things that you need to know, because it's here. Yes, it is. All right. Now let's come down here and get to the, whoops, that is not where I need to be. That was left over from my Q-related news. Okay. Oh, for heaven's sakes. I am having troubles tonight, let me tell you. Okay. So we're going to come down here. Now this from Helen Branswell. She said, terrible news from the Ebola response in North Kivu. Now that's in the Congo. Another member of the response was killed in violence directed at the people trying to stop this horrible outbreak. This person is the fifth, I believe, to have died for the sin of trying to rid Northeast Congo of Ebola. For shame. Now, the Triage Volamba Health Center in Butembo Health Zone was vandalized by unknown persons on the night of May 25th to May 26, 2019. This Saturday, May 25th, 2019, part of the village population, Bushahiro, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing these names right, in Mabalco Health Zone, rose up and attacked the home team in the response against Ebola, composed of village residents who were trained to carry some response activities. A medical team of prevention and control of infections has died of his wounds while being transferred to the General Hospital, Mabalco. The Bushahiro Health Center was ransacked and looted, and 3 houses in the village were burned. Now, I'll tell you what happened. This epidemic has been going for a while, okay, and it's spreading because there's a lot of militias and so forth in the area, and there's a lot of I guess what you would call them would be superstitions. For example, when they're trying to take their temperature, they're doing it with a little gun that they point to the head, which will take the temperature, because one of the first signs of Ebola is a temperature of around 102 degrees. So they're anyone that's coming that they're trying to scan everybody in the whole area, and the villagers think that they're trying to read their minds and send the information to their enemies. So they're avoiding coming into these health centers, and these health centers are continually being attacked. And some people whose loved ones have died, the families have gone in and brought the bodies out. The bodies are highly, highly contagious. So then you've got people out in the outer perimeter that didn't have Ebola, now has Ebola. And then the same thing is happening in the perimeter, which is pushing it out further. So you're getting it pushed further and further out from the center. And because of the armed militia, it's not really easily, just one moment here. It's not really easy to, contain it, because the health workers are continually in trouble, and the the clinics are being raided and so forth. So we've got that. Then I heard that we are sending 6,000 soldiers over there. Now, you know, there's got to be a huge problem when we send 6,000 soldiers over there. Now, these are healthcare providers, soldiers, whatever, what have you. I don't know. They're military. And so we've got that going on. Then we've got another issue. The UN is somehow, and I guess through Soros and all these agencies that are providing money for the invasion of America, which is what it is. That's what's happening on our southern border. It is an invasion. These aren't just Central Americans, Mexicans and Central Americans. Oh, no, no. There's people from all over. Pakistan, there's lots of Muslims, there's lots of everything, but that doesn't concern me as much. Well, it does for a whole other reason. There is a bunch from the Congo, and some of them have tested positive for Ebola. Here's the thing. Who do they have testing these people? Nurses. Nothing wrong with nurses. I respect nurses. They have a hard job and they're darn smart people, most of them. But you know what their screening consists of? Taking their temperature. Now, keep in mind that it takes 21 days for this to incubate in your system. But now it's showing up in such organs as the eyes, and there's no test to determine that. None. So you could be carrying now Ebola in your eyes, and they can take a blood test. They wouldn't know. They can take your temperature. Well, for 21 days, it would be normal. Then you spike a temperature. You go to the hospital. Do you think they're going to test for Ebola? No. And if they do, it's not going to show up because your eyes isn't sharing the same blood, whatever. I don't know. I read about it medically, but I'm not a medical person, so I didn't understand it fully. I just know that it's not going to show up in their blood tests. And that from someone that knows, a doctor. And there are other places it's showing up that will not test in the blood. You won't test positive for it, even though you've got it. So here we've got these people that are testing positive at the border because they're coming from an infected area. And you know, some of those people are getting across, right? Well, there was, I don't know if it was 2 or 3 people that tested positive. They're now missing. They don't know where they are. Well, where are they? They're somewhere in the US. And they're infected. So, and they could go if they went to a hospital, you know, are they going to say that they're from the Congo? Are they going to be afraid because they're in here illegally? I don't know. We don't know. There's a lot of things that aren't known right now, but I'm telling you, there's a whole lot of people at that border, and more than we've been told, and they are not all Mexicans and Central Americans. They're not. So let's go on, and we're going to go get into some other things. Okay, now this is the Ebola in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and now this is again, weekly data as of May 21st, 2019, and there have been just in this outbreak alone more than all the total since 1976 or 1978. I can't remember now what it said. I think it was 1976, if I'm not mistaken. 1976. Okay, so back then, the whole total, now we've got more than all of those years, right? Now, they said that back then was the biggest outbreak. This now is the biggest outbreak, and it's out of control. Even the World Health Organization is saying it's out of control. Now, you know, usually they try to keep a lid on this and say, everything's fine, everything's fine. It's not fine. It's not. So look at this, August 2018, and look at how this is rising. You've got almost a straight up and down curve here. This isn't good. 1,241 deaths, 1,866 total cases. So they are saving more than, but still the mortality rate is staggering. And those are the people that got caught really, really early. Those are the people that survive, not the people that by the time you've started hemorrhaging and everything, it's too late. You can't be saved because it's literally eating your organs from the inside. It's liquefying them, basically. So this is where this is all the areas. And look at, it's now in some huge, huge metropolitan areas now. That's not good. That's not good. So the orange is less than 50% mortality. Orange is 50 to 75%. So all these big orange spaces, that's 50 to 75% mortality. And then greater than 75% is the red. So, and here are the Ebola treatment center. Up here, where you've got 131 cases and 80 deaths, there's no treatment center. So these are the treatment centers, but these treatment centers are being attacked by militias. And, the workers are at times killed. Not good. So let's go down. Now, it says, but optimism can be hard to sustain in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, a country that has known conflict and instability for decades and has suffered through 10 Ebola outbreaks in 40 years. Ebola victims' families have attacked health workers who attempt to take victims' corpses for safe disposal. Infectious disease has been hard to corral, with so many Congolese on the move, traumatized and displaced by some 50 armed militia groups operating in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Those groups are bent on disrupting the activities of medical aid workers and outsiders who they suspect have either imported Ebola as a weapon or who are somehow making money from it. Mistrust has kept many ill Congolese from getting help with predictable results. By the end of 2018, the DRC Ebola outbreak was the second largest on record. It's now the largest. Yeah. In Butembo, which has more than 1 million people, nearly 90% are members of the Nande, an ethnic group that's traditionally skeptical of outsiders. Excuse me for a moment. Okay. The city also has its share of community-based armed groups who use propaganda as well as force to influence in the chaotic, impoverished areas where they live. Some are known to spread disinformation about Ebola treatment centers and the aid groups that support them, such as MSF and the International Medical Corps. Ultimately, medical outsiders are, oh, for heaven's sakes. I don't know why it keeps skipping up there. Ultimately, medical outsiders are condemned for things they must do, enforcing quarantine for Ebola patients, imposing burial policies that flout local customs, and accused of things they often didn't do. So you can see the problems that they're running into, because there's all these armed militia groups that are against these Ebola medical treatment centers, and they don't want workers to be able to dispose of the body in a way that would not spread the disease. And people are used to wrapping the bodies of their loved ones themselves, which transmit the diseases to their family. So it's not easy. It's not easy for these workers to be able to contain this, and it's not being contained. Whatever you've been hearing, it's not true. It's not being contained. So look at this. Rwanda. Now, Rwanda is next door. So they're obviously thinking it's going to pass their border, because they're training and preparing for Ebola outbreaks amid the DRC's pandemic. Look at, they're calling it a pandemic. Yeah. So we're not over here. Oh, it isn't even in our news over here. Over there, they're calling it a pandemic, because that's what it is. And the people from the Congo are being shipped over here en masse, and they're at our southern border. Hello, we got a problem. We got a big problem. You can say I'm putting out fear porn all you want. I don't care at this point. I would rather those people that listen to me regularly and who know that I'm going to bring them what I see to be the truth and what I find to be the truth, regardless of what anybody says. Because you know what? It means more, your safety means more to me than whether you like me or not. So let's go. Rwanda is training and preparing for emergency Ebola outbreaks among the DRC's pandemic. And let's look at this. North Korea accuses U.S. of spreading Ebola and choosing Africa as a bioweapon testing ground. Now, I'm not saying this is true. I'm not saying it's not true. I don't know. I don't think Trump would do that, but we know the deep state would and could. So, I don't know. KCNA called for the U.S. to face a human rights trial. North Korea is accusing the U.S. of spreading the Ebola virus, claiming it has been bent on the development of bioweapons in order to achieve world supremacy. The secretive state reacted strongly to the Ebola outbreak by closing its border to tourists and quarantining anyone who does enter. That is wise. Okay, we can say whatever we want about Kim Jong-un, but he's keeping his people safe. He's closed the border to everybody, and anybody that does come in from the outside is quarantined. Now, a report by the Korean Central News Agency, KCNA, is claiming an aide to ex-President Reagan informed them the U.S. has invented a progenitor of Ebola virus for the purpose of launching a biological warfare. Okay, now I know most of you are probably going, oh, come on. Well, did you know that the CDC has licensed, that's right, licensed a virus that combines the common flu with Ebola? Gee, I wonder why they do that. Why would anybody want to even create that, let alone license it, patent it, whatever they do? Maybe he's onto something, Kim Jong-un. I don't know. I don't believe that President Trump would ever do that, but perhaps he knows about it. And perhaps we will know about it too in time. Who, where, what, when, why. But it's a little late to lock the door once the horse is out of the barn, right? Yeah, well, the horse is out of the barn. The aide was named as Roberts, who the Washington Post said could be a reference to Paul Craig Roberts, an economist. Mr. Roberts recently published a blog post entitled, "Is the U.S. Government the Master Criminal of Our Time?" which cited work published by two academics on Ebola. Only a few weeks after a UN resolution condemned the country's human rights record, the KCNA criticized the U.S. for its own human rights record, and we don't have a good human rights record. We don't. And neither does Canada. So don't think that I'm letting the country that I'm currently in off either. In fact, none of the Western world does. The article said the U.S. has given 140 million, 89 million pounds to a pharmaceutical company for research into the virus and chose Africa as a bioweapon testing ground. It credited this claim to an unnamed Liberian professor. It also claimed that the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services admitted that the U.S. imperialists have long conducted vivisections with fatal epidemics, inflicting untold suffering on mankind. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know, but there sure has been a lot of human experimentation over the time, and a lot of it has taken place right in America, and a lot of it has taken place in Canada too, like the experiments with LSD and with MK Ultra. A lot of that was done in Montreal by Ewan Cameron, paid for by the US CIA, but it took place in Canada with full knowledge and consent of the Canadians. Well, at least the Canadians, that had control over such things, not the general public, of course. It went on to claim that the AIDS, not eggs, pandemic was also created by the U.S. In one final accusation, it said, as already known to everyone, the U.S. is the world's biggest nuke possessor. Well, that's true. And, you can't be a superpower unless you've got super weapons to protect yourself. All right. Now, let's go back because there's more. Now, it says Ebola is no longer newsworthy. No, it's not. The 2014 epidemic, it wasn't a pandemic, it was an epidemic, dominated news agendas. Nobody cares about this one. Why? Because everybody's too busy trying to pull down Trump, right? They don't care about Ebola. We don't care. As long as Trump gets impeached, that's all we care about. Yeah. It's true. All right. So here's May 2014. And look, we had this is the Ebola story count. We had between 4,000 and 6,000, closer to 6,000. And then it went down in 2015, and in 2019, we have next to none. And in fact, at times we have none. None. Biggest outbreak in history. All right, let me see. Let's look at this now. Okay. Contagion Invasion Part 1, Whatever Happened to the Principle of Protecting Our Borders Against Dangerous Diseases? I'd like to know that myself. Keeping Americans safe from dangerous diseases was a solemn duty adhered to with the utmost meticulousness since our colonial times, when our federal government began assuming control over immigration, weeding out contagious diseases with the quintessential application of the few and defined powers of the federal government against external threats that James Madison envisioned as the entire purpose of the federal government in Federalist Number 45. Has that principle been upended in the era of political correctness? Yes. Even when our medical advances were quite primitive compared to today's standard, our governments did everything they could to ensure that not a single immigrant could potentially infect Americans with diseases. Now, despite the gap between health standards of modern America and the third world being greater than ever, has our government given up our defense against contagious diseases so long as they are coming from illegal immigrants? Has our careful vetting system through the legal visa system been completely ignored at our land border? Yes. The scope of the problem. One need not be a healthcare or public policy expert to recognize the clear and present danger of up to 1 million migrants entering our country in a year. Yeah. Over the last year, 1 million. And I would suggest that it's probably more. Sorry, I have the window open a little bit and you can probably hear that motorcycle out there. I would say it's probably more, but that's what they estimate. 1 million illegal immigrants have crossed the border this year. From some of the most disease-prone parts of the world, with many of them being released into our communities within hours of arriving, with no new outbreaks of once nearly eradicated, with new outbreaks of once nearly eradicated diseases in our country on a daily basis. The threat is beyond obvious and greater in scope than anything our government dealt with at Ellis Island, given that all immigrants over a century ago was orchestrated in a controlled fashion behind quarantined checkpoints. Most of the migrants today are coming to our southern border from Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, but a number of them are coming from other volatile Latin American countries, as well as disease-ridden countries in Africa. Let's start with the Northern Triangle countries because that is a source of the majority of migrants, according to the Center for Disease Control. Dengue, chikungunya, and Zika viruses cause mosquito-borne infections and that dengue fever is nothing to kid around about because I've done missions work in the rainforest in Central America, the Mosquito Coast. Nothing to play with. So these viruses cause mosquito-borne infections of increasing concern in El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. These are diseases for which there are no vaccinations to prevent. A humanitarian brigade under the U.S. Southern Command was in Honduras this month treating locals for these very diseases. Scabies, lice, and malaria are other diseases where we have no vaccines for which to defend against, yet the former two have been very common among those surrendering to border agents, while malaria is endemic to the area, according to CDC. CDC further found that these countries are at high risk for neglected tropical diseases, with over 1 million children being treated each year for soil-transmitted helminths in Guatemala and Honduras. Central America experiences at least 200,000 cases of Chagas a year, a disease that is most commonly caused by non-ischemic heart disease in Central America and may cause cardiomyopathy years after initial infection. Then there are those diseases prevalent in these countries for which there are vaccines, but it's almost certain a large percentage of these migrants are not vaccinated. They include chickenpox, tuberculosis, measles, mumps, pertussis, and rubella. Military officials have also found hepatitis A to be prevalent in El Salvador. Last September, the Honduran Ministry of Health declared a medical state of emergency after at least 5,000 incidents of mumps were reported. That was right before the largest migrant caravan left from Honduras. According to the Tijuana Health Department, 1/3 of the caravan migrants who stayed in the region were treated for health issues, 1/3. Including tuberculosis, HIV, AIDS, chickenpox, lice, skin infections, and hepatitis. One Honduran migrant on her way in a caravan just spoke to the Associated Press and revealed she has HIV. We already know that TB has been a long-standing problem from these parts of the world and have most likely been the source of the resurgence of TB in this country after having previously eradicated it. Guatemalans are 83 times more likely to have tuberculosis than Americans and 7 times more likely than legal immigrants, according to the CDC. While there's no way to guard against the diseases that do not have vaccines, theoretically, vaccines can help prevent the danger from those diseases like TB, measles, mumps, and chickenpox. However, it is likely that most of these migrants are not vaccinated. CDC notes access to basic health care in Central America largely depends on socioeconomic status and environment, urban or rural. The migrants coming through our border now are among the poorest families from rural areas, largely from the indigenous population, who are centuries behind us in health standard and education levels. And they're being educated right alongside our children, which is why our children are no longer getting an education. Because the teachers, the classrooms are crowded and the teachers have to pay attention to those students that need it the most. So the brighter students are left to fend for themselves. They don't get an education. So, as U.S. Custom and Border Protection Commissioner Kevin McAleenan said during his testimony, I'm bad with names, before the Senate Judiciary Committee a few weeks ago, migrants travel north from countries where poverty and disease are rampant, and large numbers of them may have never seen a doctor, received immunizations, or lived in sanitary conditions. Randy Howe, head of operations for California Border Patrol Office of Field Operations, testified that many migrants travel north from countries where poverty and disease are rampant and their health can be aggravated by the physical toll of the journey. He elaborated as follows. In many cases, they arrive at our southern border already exhibiting symptoms of a health issue. Those we encounter may have never seen a doctor, received immunizations, or lived in sanitary conditions. Close quarters on trains and buses that smugglers procure for moving them through Mexico can hasten the spread of communicable diseases. All of these factors leave migrants vulnerable to serious medical complications. Then there are countries like Haiti that are saturated with cholera and typhoid. We had increased immigration from Haiti in recent years. Many are now coming in caravans. They're also endemic of Cameroon, a country where we've had an increase in illegal aliens. Typhoid, in general, is one of the deadliest diseases among those prevalent in Latin America. There was also a typhoid outbreak in Guatemala in 2017 and in El Salvador last year, but the problem is less prevalent than in Haiti. Then there is the threat of Ebola from migrants from Congo and other African countries who are increasingly coming to our border. According to the World Health Organization, there have been over 1,200 cases of Ebola in the Congo, more than that now. Remember, thanks to our open border and continued judicial and executive amnesty magnets, people have come from 50 countries just in the Rio Grande Valley, according to Rodolfo Carish, the RGV Sector Chief Patrol Agent who recently testified before the Senate Homeland Security Committee. The next part of the series will discuss the health screening and vaccination protocols, or lack thereof, and let me assure you, it is the lack thereof, of dealing with those who are caught and released into our communities. But for now, just understand that while 50 to 60% of agents are tied down dealing with bogus asylum claims, there are thousands of people coming in undetected. Raul Oritz, Deputy Chief Border Patrol Agent for the Rio Grande Valley sector, told the Epoch Times that there are 25,000 illegals, aliens that they are certain have successfully evaded Border Patrol just in one sector. We actually don't know who they are. So far, here in South Texas, we've apprehended folks from 44 different countries. These are from the Middle East, Southeast Asia, Yemen, Iraq, Pakistan, Iran, you name it. Again, even assuming that all of those who are caught from such volatile countries are not released due to either security or health concerns, what about those who we don't apprehend? That's the problem. Along with the family units surrendering to agents, there is a surge in single adults coming to the border, roughly a 30% increase in March over February. One high-ranking border agent in California told me he is most concerned about the growing trend of those coming in trying to evade detection during this crisis of family units. But why has nobody in the medical community thought of this in terms of a public health crisis at a time where they all recognize the severity of the threat from Americans who travel abroad and don't get the appropriate vaccinations? There are over 10,000 cases of cholera per week in Yemen, and Yemeni migrants are coming to our border. Ironically, the left is obsessed with creating a monopoly for the insurance cartel under the guise of promoting healthcare, but they seem to never care about the actual care part. This is why the government and the media have stifled any data on this issue, and we never hear any concern about the resurgence in diseases very plausibly emanating from this gaping hole in our public health defense. One journal article from the Infectious Disease Society of America in 2009 agonized over the ethical concerns that the publication of the results would lead to increased stigmatization and discrimination of undocumented persons in the United States and to harsher measures such as deportation when these persons receive a diagnosis of TB. Well, isn't keeping Americans safe, should that not be the utmost priority to Americans and to those Americans who are tasked with overseeing this country? Shouldn't that be the utmost concern? I mean, should we worry about hurting the feelings of somebody that's infected? I'm sorry. I do feel sorry for these people that are infected. I do think that they should get medical care, but don't let them in here. Treat them where they are. They're in Mexico. Let them stay in Mexico. Treat them there. I mean, I know there's all sorts of immigration laws and so forth that the Democrats have come up with to, that they have to be released, but come on, people. This is unbelievable. Have we become so political as a nation that political correctness will allow us to revert to the 18th century health standards? That's exactly what's happening. That is exactly what's happening. And it's not just the border. You've got you've got tuberculosis and typhus in California areas, Los Angeles, San Francisco. You've got crap in the street, so that they need the Snap Crap app, an application so that you can snap pictures of the poop so somebody can come and clean it up. And they're saying they're getting like at least 68 reports of this a day. And how many people are seeing it and not recording it? Probably lots. And because, you know, if it just becomes so commonplace that, oh yeah, more poop, I'll just step over it. Well, there's diseases in that. And homelessness is increasing exponentially in California. And, you know, there are more homeless people in California than there are high school graduates. That's a problem, people. They're sleeping on the streets. They're eating on the streets. They're pooping in the streets. And the rats, there's garbage overflowing in the street, and rats that carry tick-borne illnesses. And they've even, you know, had a resurgence of the bubonic plague. Yeah, the Black Death. So there's an issue here. It's huge. It's not fear porn, it's fact porn. I don't know, that didn't sound right, but you know what I mean. All right, now, this from DreamerSeriesPublishing.com. An Ebola outbreak is out of control in the Congo, Africa. The Border Patrol has apprehended several illegals from the Congo. The last outbreak of Ebola in the U.S. caused nationwide panic. Now what? Because we're not even hearing about this, which to me tells me it's pretty serious. You'd think somebody responsible would be reporting on it. The only people I've seen report on it, and very, very few, are the alternative media, and very few of them have touched on it. Very few. So, listen to this. The tests for Ebola are no longer able to detect all cases because Ebola is taking up residence in such organs as the eyes, where it cannot be detected with a simple blood test. Incubation can take 21 days, so there are many false negatives. And even when people start to exhibit symptoms, the symptoms are pretty much like a lot of other things. Fever, you know, well, lots of things cause fevers, you know, so it's like by the time some of these people get medical help, and you know something, if they're illegal aliens, they're probably less likely to seek out medical help, really. So by the time they seek it out, it's too late. And how many people have they infected in the meantime? How many things have they touched, which other people come behind and touch and pick it up? They have Ebola. You touch a shopping cart that somebody who has Ebola, and they've got their hands on the shopping cart, and you put your hands on the shopping cart next, and then you touch your nose, or you put your finger in your mouth, or you chew your fingernail. Well, sorry, you've got it. Yeah. All right. Let's get to this now. You can see why I felt that this was so important and why I have to bring it, despite the fact that I know that I will have all sorts of negative remarks to go through. I can already see it, because people tend to, you know, they don't, it's normalcy bias is what it's called, because you know, they'll say, oh, nothing will happen. Nothing ever happens. It's normalcy bias. So you think, nah, it's all right. It's just fear porn. It's fear porn. Just like the people that have been warning about the earthquake on the West Coast. They'll say, oh, it's fear porn. It's been all right. We've lived here forever. It's been fine. Yeah. It's fine until it's not fine. It's normalcy bias. We all have it. We all want to think everything's okay. All right. Do we have the Ebola virus in our country at the Mexican border? Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Now, let's listen to this. Let me make this a little bigger. I know some of you are on your tiny phones. Your tiny phone people. Okay, here we go.
Mexico. These people are by the Texas Laredo Bridge, but they can't cross because they need papers from Mexico. And Mexico ain't, these are these people that escape. They're starting to show up. And right now, according to the Mexican federal and the people that are there, they're saying that there's, or the Mexican immigration, they're saying that there's over 1,000 of these Africans there by the Laredo Bridge that crosses into the United States, but they can't. These people know that they can't cross that. They can't cross through that point of entry there. Headline: Hundreds of African migrants protest for entry at Texas border ridge. America, what did I tell you? Now, Breitbart is reporting on this. They're like, man, Africans from Africa at the border? What? Go get a picture of these people and report this news.
Now, it's not, and let me just say, it's not because they're Africans. It's not because they're Africans. It's that they've got the biggest Ebola outbreak in history. And some of these are from the Congo. That's the problem. And okay, you're saying, okay, well, they're keeping them on that side. That's fine. Oh, really? Like they keep the Mexicans on that side? Like they keep the Central Americans on that side? Like they're so successful at keeping people behind? No. You know that some of them are going to get through. And here's the other thing. So what if they do keep them on that side? Some of them are infected with Ebola. In conditions like that, they'll all have it. And do you think it'll stay on that side of the border then with so many Mexicans crossing illegally? I don't think so. Like, think of this logically. We've got a big problem here. A big, big problem.
Hundreds of African migrants gathered on Mexico. Now, these are the ones that escaped and that somehow these people got there. And the Mexicans are like, oh my God, who are all these Africans?
I don't know who this guy is, but I like him.
That's what's going on. America, you might think this is funny. This ain't a joke. These people are coming. But guess what? We got that decision from the 9th District Circuit Court for the Trump administration that said what? Yo, you guys got to go back to Mexico and wait. So even if they come, they got to stay right in Mexico and wait for their court date, which might take about 2 or 3 years. So these people might just settle in Mexico.
Well, hundreds of African immigrants protest at a Laredo port of entry Monday morning.
That's right, Max. Well, they're claiming not enough is being done by both the United States and Mexican officials to help them get asylum into the U.S.
Our Alex Gano has more on the group allegations and what U.S. custom officials have to say.
Immigrants from Africa, made up of men, women, and children, stood their ground waiting for answers outside the Mexican Customs office near Laredo Bridge.
We want to cross. We have almost a month here in Mexico, and we can't even register. That's why we're here at Customs.
After a long wait, a Mexican custom official stepped out to speak to the group. Among the hundreds, a handful of immigrants had a private meeting with custom officials while the rest waited patiently in front of Bridge 2.
Yeah, custom officials are talking to some of us.
The group not only alleges they are unable to meet with U.S. custom officials for an appointment, but that the agency is preferring one particular group over the others, Cuban immigrants.
We are worried because of the shelters the Cubans are paying and us Africans, we can't. We don't understand what's happening.
African immigrants are also claiming mistreatment at city shelters.
There are so many people, not enough space. If you take your camera, you'll see. It's so bad.
Statements sent by U.S. Customs and Border Protection, they say in part, the number of inadmissible individuals CBP is able to process varies based upon case complexity, available resources, medical needs, translation requirements, holding and detention space, overall port volume, and ongoing enforcement actions. They go on to say port of entry facilities were not designed to hold hundreds of people at a time who may be seeking asylum, and they are also charged with keeping the flow of legitimate trade and travel. Right now, they say the Department of Homeland Security is utilizing their limited resources as efficiently and effectively as possible in the midst of the current surge at the southwest border.
Now, here's the thing, okay? They're having preference over Cubans, if we can believe what this guy is saying. But, you know, there isn't the diseases in Cuba that are in some of the other nations, number one. Now, and they do have a legitimate claim for asylum, those from Cuba. They know that. So the thing is that I'm thinking is they're saying, well, we don't have money. We Africans, we don't have money to pay. Well, how did they get there? Somebody got them there. And I don't believe that they had the money to take airplanes over the Atlantic, like over, across overseas. And really, I mean, who's paying for this? Somebody is. Somebody's paying for these people to get over here because they don't have the money to. And some of these people that are from the villages in Honduras and so forth that are rural, that have maybe never seen a doctor, they didn't have the money to travel all that ways. It was paid for by somebody. Now, we know it wasn't our government, but it was people within our government, maybe, one side, and some other George Soros and people like that. We know. So anyway, I'm not going to play the rest of that. It's more of the same, and time is ticking, but here is something I've marked it as important, so I would imagine we need to watch this.
With tomorrow's news today, this is Headlines with a Voice.
A U.S. Border Patrol processing center in McAllen, Texas, has forced a temporary closure. The Rio Grande Valley sector has temporarily suspended intake operations at the centralized processing center. Individuals apprehended will be held at other locations until the situation is resolved.
What
a Border
situation?
Patrol spokesman said last night in a prepared statement. The official revealed that a large number of illegals exhibit high fevers and other flu-like symptoms, prompting the agency to move newly apprehended illegals to other locations. The processing center is one of the main installations used by Border Patrol to document the intake of illegals. The center in McAllen, Texas, was created to help manage the record-breaking numbers arriving at the South Texas border each day. In related news, a record number of Border Patrol agents are calling in sick and others are showing up to work sick because they're out of sick time, the head of the local Border Patrol union told El Paso's ABC 7 News. I believe this is probably the record, Border Patrol-wide, since ever, of agents calling in sick, said Carlos Favela, president of the National Border Patrol Council, Local 1929. Favela said that the trend started at the same time as the surge of caravans seeking asylum in the U.S. in late 2018. Newly released figures from the Department of Homeland Security reveal that Border Patrol agents encountered 109,144 illegals in April of 2019, the highest since 2007. Favela said agents are filing reports with the union, saying they came into contact with illegals infected with H1N1 virus and other illnesses, including Legionnaires. The union called on the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to step in and investigate. The union also demanded better protection for agents, better health screening procedures conducted by doctors, not nurses, and new facilities where sick illegals can be quarantined. 20 to 25 agents in the El Paso sector are calling in sick every day. The nightmare for the agents out in the field is that they contract tuberculosis or some kind of bacterial infection and unknowingly take that home to their families. CDC is expected to visit several Border Patrol facilities in El Paso in the coming weeks. Narrator's note. Did you catch that, folks? The health screening is conducted by nurses. Nurses, not doctors. Consider all the illnesses that present flu-like symptoms in the early stages of infection. Yeah, especially that one. For Headlines with a Voice, this is Nancy Morgan Hart.
Now, this is, I hate to play a whole video. It was only 3 minutes and 14 seconds long, and it was from Headlines with a Voice. So I do want to give them their due. They are the ones that reported this. And now, isn't this interesting that they have a quarantine at McAllen Processing Center? It's been shut down. They've got the most Border Patrol agents calling in sick ever. And I do believe that they are actually sick because they're just talking about all these people showing up with high fevers, which could be anything. But you've got to realize that, let's just say there was one person with Ebola, just one. And they're all in close quarters, being, on the other side, they're traveling in close quarters, they're eating same food and so forth. How long do you think it would be before a whole bunch of people had it? Yeah, so you think Ebola's not here? It's here. There are people that were diagnosed with Ebola that are missing and in the United States. It's here, folks. And you can believe mainstream media because they're not reporting any of this. You can believe them if you wish to. Now, what do you do to prepare? Well, I don't know. But I'll tell you one thing. I'm going to be careful. I'm going to be careful when I'm out in public. What I touch. Carry your sanitizer. Don't touch things, and then put your fingers in your mouth. And perhaps I'll need to do something about what we can do to prepare in terms of, how do we combat this in our own lives? Because, if several people in your town showed up with Ebola, how do you react to that? How do you keep yourself safe? So, anyway, let's go back here because I do have a few other things and I do want to hurry because this has been a long video. And it says African migrants, Texas border monitored Ebola. Let's just click on this. It says, this is from Andrea Hurd, and Breitbart News is now reporting on this, thankfully. Illegal immigrants are coming to the border with sickness, and at the moment, Ebola is being monitored among other diseases. Breitbart News is now reporting that 20 Congolese migrants are being monitored for Ebola in shelters as they wait to enter the United States. A public health official in Laredo, Texas, said 20 Congolese migrants were monitored for Ebola and other diseases in shelters in the city and across the Mexican border in Nuevo Laredo. I'm not sure how to pronounce that last word. And look at this. Happening now, military delegates from 25 countries are visiting Rugerero Treatment Center located near the DRC border and being presented an Ebola simulation exercise to showcase how Rwanda is prepared in terms of Ebola prevention and management. So 25 countries participating in that. And today, NCDC met with stakeholders and partners to review Nigeria's preparedness for an Ebola virus disease outbreak and to strengthen cross-border surveillance since the onset of the EVD outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo. NCDC and partners continue to monitor the situation. I've also got a bunch here about pig Ebola and we're in big trouble there too. Look at this. All of these are outbreaks. Says African swine fever, it's also called pig Ebola, reported in Hong Kong and more Vietnamese regions in May. So that is spreading. More pigs have been killed in China because of this outbreak than all of America produces. Yeah, that's a lot. So you take all the pigs that America produces, China killed more than that because of, or have been killed because of pig Ebola. So that's another issue. And there's one more thing I wanted to get to here, and that will be the end for now. Let me know if you want more information about this or if you have questions. I will do my best to find out. And if any of you are living close to the border and happen to know any information about this that I haven't covered, or what you've heard, or let me know. Please let me know, because I want to get this out. Somebody needs to be talking about this, really. So let's just, well, I guess we already know this, that the African migrants are being monitored for Ebola. So I think that's it for now. I am going to stop because this is getting rather long, and I do want to get it uploaded so that as many people can see it tonight as possible. And I will work on, in the meantime, the Q-related news that I recorded earlier and the file is corrupted. I'm not sure if I'm going to record it again tonight or not. I may. We'll just see how long this takes to get uploaded and so forth. So thank you guys so much for listening. I appreciate all of you. I really do. And you can go ahead and disagree. You're not going to hurt my feelings. I've got very, very thick skin, but if you get abusive, I'm going to delete you. So, and I don't expect, I think that most of the people that listen to me regularly, if they disagree, they'll do so respectfully, as they always do. So, I have no concerns about that at all. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. I appreciate it. Stay well, stay blessed, and keep seeking truth, because deception bites.